WAOB News 10 presents Dialogue, a weekly public affairs program exploring community concerns and spotlighting regional activities.
And good Sunday morning to you, everybody. Welcome to Dialogue. When they say it really is a small world, it really is a small world. So I am joined today by Craig E. Moore, who is the executive director of the Albany Civil Rights Institute. And as we have gotten to know each other, oh boy, have we connected a lot of dots. He is, of course, he's been in Southwest Georgia for approximately 10 years. And again, he is the new executive director of the Albany Civil Rights Institute. And of course, we're going to be hearing a lot about activating the movement, and we'll talk about that. But I'm saying, Reverend Moore, welcome.
Yes.
Welcome. And I'm very, very excited to meet you in person. I had the pleasure of hearing your musical talents at the Lift Every Voice concert, where he was on that piano, and those students were just awesome. Of course, you are succeeding Frank Wilson at the Albany Civil Rights Institute, and the irony is that Frank Wilson is also a wonderful musician.
Oh, yes,
so you have that in common.
Yes,
but we've also been connecting dots in that you were minister of music in Bradley, Georgia, which is in Jones County, Georgia, near Macon. That is my husband's hometown, Bradley, Georgia. Then I find out that you lived in Brunswick, Georgia. That is my hometown. And you were familiar with my high school, Glenn Academy, and all of that.
Yes.
And so what brought you to Southwest Georgia 10 years ago?
Oh gosh, in a nutshell, I would say it was the hand of God. I grew up as a Georgia 4-H'er. Traveling the state through Georgia 4-H, learning the state, having friends around the state from the time I was in 5th grade all the way to presently. And long story short, I was a district officer and state officer, and when you serve at that level in Georgia 4-H, you have to attend statewide events. So I met friends all over the state. So I grew up coming to Southwest Georgia, never thought I'd live here.
The Nats, right?
Yes,
you weren't
exactly.
crazy about the Nats.
No,
Okay.
because we have what we call sweat bees in Northwest Georgia, which we call them sand gnats over in your area,
fierce.
right?
They are fierce.
So we have them in Southeast Georgia, right? But we also have them in Northwest, where I'm from. But long story short, I answered my call to preach around 2009, living in Macon, and I was serving as interim pastor for a church in Dooley County, and was invited to be a guest speaker here in Southwest Georgia. And while here, some of the members of my present congregation, the New Salem Missionary Baptist Church, 9925 Stagecoach Road, Baconton, Georgia.
He wants you to remember that.
That's right. And if you ever hear New Salem out and about, that's kind of like our call. You know how Greeks have their
right.
There you go.
New Salem.
Yeah, you won't miss us, right? But anyway, so I was guest speaker here in Albany for a service at a local church, and some of the members were in that congregation. They told the current pastor at the time, Reverend James Edwards, who's our pastor emeritus, we love him, that they wanted me to come and do a youth service. Now, I'm 43 now. I don't get a whole lot of invitations
to do that,
to do youth service, you know. So I did, and I came twice to New Salem. And Reverend Edwards was actually preparing to retire at the time. And so he asked me on that second time of sharing the word if I would pray about being Salem's next pastor. And I thought, wow, you know, I knew I would pastor one day, just didn't know when, and definitely didn't know where. I wanted to stay right where I was in Middle Georgia, doing what I was doing, but I prayed about it. And the Lord, I believe, led me to Baconton. And 10 years later, New Salem and Southwest Georgia, the city of Albany, is one of the best things that's happened to me in life so far.
And fast forward, you have been in your position as the executive director of the Albany Civil Rights Institute for how long now?
Just a little over 2 months, right at 2 months, so still very new. a lot of learning, but also you kind of have to pray with your feet moving, because there's a lot to be done while there's also a lot to be repaired and updated and all of that. So
and so your theme, activating the movement, since you've been in your position, you've had a couple of events, more than a couple of events.
Yes,
if you'll share, I know you had some book signings. And you may remember, and I've got to say this because Peter Zampa, who is with Gray TV, I posted a photo when he came by WALB.
Yep.
Now, I knew that he was in town to interview Rutha Harris, but I didn't know all the details. And if you can fill us in on that.
Sure. So Pete called us up and was asking about getting some information from the Albany Civil Rights Institute, and he was telling me that they were going to be coming in town because they were looking for a way to feature Albany in America 250, which is a feature where they travel to different parts of the country that have historical references or significance. And he wanted to feature Albany. And so his first thought was to call the Civil Rights Institute. And so he and I talked, we set it up, and I didn't realize at the time that he was who he was to WALB.
To Gray, yes.
Right, and to Gray Media. And so he said, we set up the day, he came down, he said he'd bring a camera crew. And so we set up to, I knew that I'd be interviewed, and then he said, anybody else that you can think of that could speak to the movement or that would highlight, Albany. And of course, Rutha Harris came to mind and knew that we might get a little song,
Okay.
And that's exactly what happened. We filmed it in the church where the late Dr. Martin Luther King actually stood and spoke. So I thought, what better venue and backdrop. And then Miss Rutha came and she shared her insight. He was able to interview her. And he wanted her to sing at the end of the interview. But when you interview Rutha,
it's when the Spirit hits. When the Spirit hits.
And I thought Peter was going to leave his soul because she just started in song, and you know how powerful the voice is. I think Peter was about to run out of the church because he was not ready. But she represented Albany well with the enthusiasm, with the historical references, that only a Rutha Mae Harris or a freedom singer could share. And so I think it's going to be great.
We need to be on the lookout for that interview with Peter Zampa. Now, you have touched on something that I consider myself a cheerleader for this community. Wherever I am, I'm cheerleading because this is your community. All communities have warts. We get that. But this goes to show that you never know who is watching.
Right.
And now this story, even though we've, featured the civil rights movement, Albany and Dr. King and so many others who were a part of the movement, this is going to go national.
Yes,
so
it is.
Here is little Albany, Georgia.
Right.
We need to celebrate us.
Right.
And join in the celebration. So, of course, WALB will definitely be getting that word out when that airs. But we need to celebrate us. I know I'm clapping. I'm doing what the young people do. We need to celebrate us. But I'm excited.
Yes.
There are some positive things going on. It's a little slow, and it may seem a little slow, but there are some positive things going on. Now, we spent the first segment talking about you and how you arrived here in Southwest Georgia.
Right.
When we come back, we will focus more on the Albany Civil Rights Institute and some things that you can expect and why we need to celebrate the Albany Civil Rights Institute. Stay with us, everybody. We'll have more after the break. And welcome back, everybody. Many of you may already know Craig Moore. He is the executive director of the Albany Civil Rights Institute. He has been in that position for a little over 2 months. He's here to talk about, of course, we shared last segment, how he ended up here in Southwest Georgia and the fact that he is here and he has embraced his new home for 10 years. And as executive director for those 2 months, I know you've already had some pretty outstanding events. We talked about the book signings, but Medgar Evers' daughter was here.
Rena Evers Everett is her name, who lives in Jackson, Mississippi. But we are a a melting pot and kind of a hotbed for civil rights activity, of course, Albany. A lot of people would say that the Albany movement was a failure, but we know that it was not. And we later learned that Dr. King used what he learned in Albany to strategize for Birmingham and for Selma and for Montgomery.
Not to mention the music.
There you go.
Because the Freedom Singers and the Freedom songs, they were duplicated.
Was the soul
yes,
of the soul of the, and even to this day, just last week, our Freedom Singers were in Selma. And they, the two last of the original Freedom Singers, led the march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So Albany was front and center there in Selma. You know?
Hey, we're still making history.
There you go.
Still making history.
And with that being said, I think working together to highlight that, Casey Somerville, who is the new president and CEO of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, Visit Albany. She and I worked together along with some other community partners, and she had the brilliant idea to bring Miss Evers Everett to Albany. And so she called and said, Craig, let's work together. If you'll host it, we'll kind of plan it and work together. And so to that end, her staff, our staff, and then other local partners, we got together. We brought Miss Evers Everett to Albany, and she is still raving about her hospitality, her experience, her welcome. And then we had an overflow crowd. So we had to hire a local media company to do an overflow screen in our lobby, because it filled our multi-purpose room to capacity. So it was just a phenomenal event. Local city leaders was there. The mayor was there. City manager was there. And then just a great mix of the community was there. And she was well received. And she will never forget Albany, Georgia. So.
Well, you work where you mentioned the community partners. You also have a board of directors at the Albany, 15-member board of directors?
Yes.
And you're working on goals. What are we going to do going forward?
So one of our immediate goals, as you mentioned, the board, is there are some spots to fill on that board. And Kenneth Cutts is our chairman of the board, who works with Congressman Bishop, and Mr. Charlie Craps is the vice chair of the board. And so he and I kind of work together, staying in communication to make sure that things are moving the way they need to. But one of our first goals is to fill the board, because I will not be able to do this heavy lift by myself. And I'm excited about that, because the flavor of your board, as you well know, tends to kind of savor and flavor the entity itself. So there's a lot of room for ideas and opinions, and sometimes that can be a dangerous word.
But you want to hear.
Yes.
You want to hear what's on the mind.
Yes.
Now, you touched on it already, but a part of your goals would be, of course, celebrating Albany's rich civil rights history.
Yes.
Also making the Institute a hotbed for tourism and culture. So you're inviting guests in, and of course they're getting a little flavor of what Albany has to offer. But what about school? I know in the past there have been school tours and maybe senior citizens who come through. What's happening with that now?
So actually, and I'm glad you brought that up, one of our things that we're working on immediately as well is an interactive tour choice. So we want to diversify your options, because we're trying to avoid being if you've seen it once, you've seen it 1,000 times, right? So we want to offer, instead of a traditional, or in addition to, I should say, a traditional tour that's led by a docent or a tour guide, an interactive tour track that you can choose, where you will touch history and hear history, and we may even bring in a local historian or someone who can answer questions and spend that time with you.
Maybe relatives of some of the people featured.
There you go. Or if you want your child, and I know my museum administrator, Miss Irene Turner, is going to get me for this, but if you want your child's picture in the driver's seat of that bus that's coming through the wall, we're in talks now about opening that up, to capture that history and really have a conversation piece. The other thing that we're doing is targeting, we've got a partnership meeting coming up with Albany State. And so we're definitely looking to Dr. Griswold and Dr. Scott at Albany Tech and Albany State to see how we can forge a further partnership where we're hoping to have students in residence to do research or to provide insight, as we have in host tours. So there's a lot of things moving that's coming down the pipeline. So we're excited about that.
As it stands right now, what are the hours? If family reunions coming to Albany, Southwest Georgia, you may want to,
yes.
Do you still have
We're
that
a great
area
destination
where you
for
can
that.
have social events?
We do. So right now our hours are 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Tuesdays through Saturdays. However, this just in, and you'll get this hot off the press, we are looking to expand our hours very soon. And the new expanded hours will be 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So stay tuned to us. We're staffing and trying to get that in place. But that's something that we want to bring to the community, extended hours, which would have been the hours that we operated pre-COVID. Okay. So we're kind of trying to get that back. Now, you mentioned family reunions and event hosting. Well, I don't know even how to describe it, but I am convinced that we have one of the best kept secrets at the Institute. It's a venue, and it's in the smack dab in the middle of the Institute. Yes. And it's our courtyard, and many people pass right by it, don't know it even exists. But you're talking about graduation parties, vow renewals, small weddings, family reunions,
birthday parties.
Birthday parties.
Yes.
You're talking about, if you can imagine, right? Picture it, Sicily, 1942, right? I think that's what the Golden Girls said, right? A tiled terrace.
Oh.
Okay. Tiled terrace.
It is a beautiful
with an
area.
open skylight, right? So it's like God himself just took a chunk of the Institute's roof off, and so your natural backdrop for your event would be the stars at night. Oh. Or the beautiful sunshine in the middle of the day on a warm day, lined with white columns and white trellises. And you're talking about a space large enough for hors d'oeuvres in the corner, a jazz bar. And so those are some of a jazz band. I'm thinking something else.
There you go.
But,
one of those two, right?
There you go, dessert bar, whatever, But I cannot wait to kind of repackage and represent that space in particularly to the city of Albany.
Well, we need to take another break, and when we come back, I will give you the contact information. And we've been positive. We've talked about all of the things that are on the horizon that you want to reinvigorate at the Albany Civil Rights Institute. There are always challenges, so we're going to talk about those and maybe some solutions to those challenges.
Yes.
We will continue to talk with Craig Moore after the break. And welcome back, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. I'm still talking with Craig E. Moore, Executive Director of the Albany Civil Rights Institute. And I'm going to ask you, talked about the positives, and we're about to talk about challenges. Why should Southwest Georgia, the state, the nation, maybe even the world come to the Albany Civil Rights Institute in Albany, Georgia?
I believe all people should experience the Civil Rights Institute here in Albany, Georgia, because it is a capstone experience of the resilience of the human spirit. I believe our claim to fame for the Albany movement specifically is the fact that our citizens refused to allow second-class treatment, disenfranchisement, and they did not wait for the likes of Dr. King, Ralph Abernathy to come the movement was already up and going, you know, because it was just right. They felt like that they were not being afforded their inalienable rights. And so the human spirit here in Albany, just historically, I mean, even to Horace King, the bridge builder, and many people may not know, and you learn this at the Institute, A Reason to Come, that the bridge that's out, the Oglethorpe Bridge, right, originally came right into the Bridge House, which is now a Welcome Center.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that the bridge came right into the house, and horse and buggy would have to check in or pay their fee and then go out the front of that very building. And I think those types of tenacity, ingenuity, those stories need to be told, and we tell them every day at the Civil Rights Institute.
I'm sure that there are many people here in Southwest Georgia who are familiar with Horace King, but if you go down to the Bridge House, he is honored there.
Yes, he
is.
And
not only here in Albany, but across the state. But we want them to know that he is honored here in Albany.
Yes.
So I want to hear, you know, since you've observed, you've been there 2 months, I know that's not a long time, but you've been in the community.
Right.
What do you see as some of the challenges that the Albany Civil Rights Institute faces?
Number one would be marketing and PR.
Okay.
I think
we're working on that now.
And we are.
Yes,
as a matter
yes,
of fact, I had a meeting with a firm 2 weeks ago, and we're narrowing it down as to which firm we're going to choose. But that is our number one thing. Marketing, promotion is everything. How you message yourself. And I think for our community, locals, if you've seen it once, you've seen it 1,000 times, seems to be what I hear a lot when I'm talking with residents.
So why should I go back?
Right. Why should I go back? What's different? And I think marketing and promotional efforts will help with that. We'll have a whole new face, a social media presence, website, all of that. But I think ultimately, you know, that was a challenge because if people don't hear anything, there's not a buzz, there's not movement, then they'll go where there is. And so we've got to create that buzz, and we're working on that now, and show the movement. And we're doing that with these past events, book signings, and then we've got some future events. One other challenge, I believe, was budgeting. You know, the income as of COVID, donations really slowed down. Our membership renewals slowed down. And so I want to hats off and kudos to our staff, Miss Irene Turner, who's the administrator and has been there since before it opened. They did a gargantuan job in holding the Institute together during COVID. Because we've not had a full-time executive director since 2020. And I'm also the first to be considered a city employee. That's
right. You answer to the city.
Right. I answer directly to the city manager. So those, and that addressed some of the challenges. And then there's some infrastructure things that we're yet working on. The roof is being repaired. New HVAC systems have gone in, and pretty soon we'll have an electrician and his team in the Institute repairing all of the lighting that was kind of put on the back burner during COVID.
And you're also working on some programming. As you said, I love what you said about something about the buzz, they'll go where there is a buzz.
Right.
So you've got events that are coming up that you are, putting on that goal list, voter registration, debates, all those types of things. And if people, and then of course you're talking about bringing back the youth Freedom Singers, so that will be a regular. If people want to get in touch with you, I've got your office number, which is 229-432-1698. They can also drop you an email, seymour@albanyga.gov. Again, those hours.
The hours right now are 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Tuesday through Saturdays. And in the near future, you'll hear us make a big deal. We're excited about expanding 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So stay tuned. All
right. And again, it's such a pleasure to hear that musician come out at the Lift Every Voice concert. It was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh. Well,
and the students did a great job.
Of course, we're not forgetting the students. I mean, everybody involved. Frank Wilson, and Sawiga, all of them.
Big shoes to fill.
Right. But he's pulling you all in.
Yes.
Pulling you all in. A pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you for having me.
And have a wonderful Sunday, everybody.